Hello everyone. Welcome to my channel. My name is Elise. I hope you're all doing so good today. We're here to kick off another vlog, and a vlog that truly I have no business filming because I have so many other videos that I want to film before the year is over. But I'm realizing there are at least like one or two books that I know I'm gonna read that don't fit into other projects, and I think I could really love the books. So I kind of want to film and get my thoughts along the way. So hopefully you enjoy this, which you probably already know because of the title of this video, but I am going to be reading some 2025 releases, but not just that. I'm going to be reading the 2025 releases that I have been hearing amazing reviews about that weren't necessarily on like my personal anticipated releases for the year, but because the reviews that have been coming in, it has led me to believe that I could really love them as well. So there are three books in particular that I feel like this year fit the bill for what I'm trying to do. The first one, and the book that I'm going to be starting off with, because I have actually already started it, is A Language of Limbs by Dylin Hardcastle. I'll put the publisher down below. I don't own any of these books, so I think they're all from Big Five publishers, so I'm not going to know which one, so I'll put them all down below. This book I have been hearing amazing things about, and I know I have to read this one because I have some friends that I convinced them to read Margot's Got Money Troubles, and the book that they were loving at the time, both of them, was A Language of Limbs. And so I said, you read that one, I'll read this one. So I have to read this one to be an equal book recommendations exchange with them. And I love getting to read books that like people in my non-online life are also reading, because that's a little bit more rare for me. So I'm excited to read this one. I've also heard really good reviews from Book Bench, a channel I'll link down below. He loved this book, and from a few other people as well. So I'm excited to read this. This one is a novel that follows a young girl, an adolescent girl. I think that's when it starts, at least. I don't know how long it follows her, but it follows two different versions of her life. So we get alternating chapters where we get like Limb 1, which is the first version of her life. And then we get Limb 2, which is the second version of her life, and they play out in different ways. So that's the setup I'll give you so far. I will wait to give you a larger update until next time. Second book that I'm interested in reading is Stag Dance by Torrey. I have read Detransition Baby by Torrey, and I really enjoyed it. I think it was in my top books of the year that I read it, and a number of years ago. This is a novella and short story collection combined together that I have been hearing amazing things about, and because I really loved her first novel, I think this could also be a big hit for me. So I'm going to be picking up that one as well. And then lastly, the one that has been coming up more recently for me that I think I will really enjoy is The Hounding. Who is this by? I actually don't even know the author. I put the author and the publisher down below. When I do the updates and start reading it, I'll know who it is, but I don't know quite yet. First of all, cover, amazing, gorge, love the cover. And this one is about a group of sisters who, the town that they're living in, the rural town, thinks that they're slowly turning into dogs, or that they have turned into dogs, something like that. The premise is intriguing enough, but so many people have loved this. So many people that I have similar tastes to have loved this. So I think it could be for me, and I think the fall season is the perfect time to read it. This has very commonly been comped to The Virgin Suicides, which I have not read, so that comp doesn't mean as much to me, but I'm sure it means more to other people if you have read it. So those are the three books I'm thinking about reading for this video. Some 2025 releases that have been getting great reviews, and based on what people have been saying and the people who have been saying it, I think I could really love them as well. So like I said, we're going to start off with A Language of Limbs. I'm only like 25 pages in at this point. So I'm going to wait till I'm a little bit farther through and then update you. And this vlog, I think, is going to be stretched out over a long period of time because I'm going to intersperse a lot of other books for other projects in between this one. So you're probably just going to get a little B-roll of me like bopping about, walking mostly, because I'm going to be listening to these on audiobook. Hopefully you enjoy this easy breezy vlog of some 2025 releases. So I will see you once I've read a little bit more. Bye. Okay, I'm here to give you a quick update on Language of Limbs. I want to give you just a brief synopsis of what's happening, but I do truly want to keep it brief because I feel like the kind of twists and turns, not in a thriller sense, but in a like life choices sense, is part of the fun of this novel. So we have two different limbs that we are following in this novel. The first limb kicks off with our narrator who is having a sexual experience with their childhood best friend. They're teenagers, I think, at the time. I can't remember exactly how old, but something around 16. And her best friend is a woman, and they are caught by our narrator's mother. And the mother is aghast and extremely against it, tells the father, and the father like beats our narrator. And it is very horrific. Our narrator ends up fleeing and is living on the streets for multiple days when she gets picked up by this truck driver that takes her to this house that is a safe haven for queer people. This is all taking place during the early 80s, maybe even it might start in the late 70s, and we kind of get her life from that point on. Limb 2 kicks off with a young queer girl who is very much suppressing her sexuality. So she knows that she is attracted to and essentially in love with her female best friend, but she decides to start dating a boy, and then we get her life from that point forward. So it's a really interesting progression of both of the narratives at the same time, and we flip back and forth in these two limbs quite frequently, which I think is really effective because you can never get too deep in one without having to remember the other one, and it's sort of like forced back into your consciousness, and I really like that the author is doing that. Overall, I would say this story it's a coming of age story in many ways, kind of two different versions of a queer coming of age story, and it is also really about love, which is a huge part of coming of age for a lot of people. Not for everyone, but for a lot of people. And there's so much about the different kinds of love that we experience in our lives, from platonic love to familial love, to romantic love, and even within those subcategories, how different those loves can present. And I love that as well. I do think this book is just like very smartly written so far, very heartfelt, and I'm excited to keep going. It does really seem like where each story ends is going to imbue a lot of meaning on what the author is kind of trying to say with both of them. It's not the only thing that I think they'll be trying to say, but I do think it will greatly matter. And I sort of have a suspicion of what I think is gonna be the ending of the two. So I will keep you updated. I probably won't check back in until I finish it because I don't want to give you any more of the plot for the reasons that I said earlier. So I'll check back with you once I have finished, but thoroughly enjoying it so far. I can see why it's been well liked and received. And I'll see you all in a little bit. Okay, I'm gonna give you an update for Language of Limbs because I have since finished it and I really enjoyed it. So I know my last update, I had given you like some of the synopsis thus far. I'm not gonna tell you any more about the plot lines because I think that's some of the fun of the novel and some of the intrigue of the novel is realizing where the branches go and where they end up. But I will say the meaning that I thought was going to come from where the book ended is what I thought, but it was in a different way than I imagined. So that was very fun for me to experience. And this had so many really deeply moving passages about grief. I think that is one of the biggest takeaways for me about this book. It really reminded me of that Maddie Mortimer book, Maps of Our Spectacular Bodies. I loved that book, and this one I feel like talked about grief in a similar way, like this really like embodied version of grief. And you can sort of get that through the title, Language of Limbs. There's a lot of really good title integration in this story, but we're frequently talking about how like the body can represent feelings and meaning and sentiment in a way that words can't, or language prohibits us from doing. Yeah, really, really profound stuff around grief and love. I think overall, like, this book is hopeful in tone, even though some heavy things do happen throughout. And I know people often look for that balance. Like, there's heavy subject matter, but the tone is still hopeful. If you like that in a book, I think this would be a really good fit for you. And overall, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I do think the audiobook is fantastic, partially because they use two different narrators to narrate each path, so you can keep them very clearly in your head. And also you get to hear the accents. They're Australian, and it's nice to like hear it in the accent that the author intended. So that was very fun as well. So I'd highly recommend the audiobook. That has been Language of Limbs. Right now, I'm still waiting for the holds to come in from the library for the other two books. So what I decided is my hold came in for One Day Everyone Will Have Always Been Against This by Omar Akkad, the nonfiction book. And this actually fits perfect for this video as well. It is a 2025 release that I've heard amazing things about and want to read. I actually did start this book on audio earlier in the year, but quickly realized that I needed to read it physically because it is fairly scattered. It is a combination of memoir about the author's own experience with his kid, at least so far, and then like cultural criticism on the genocide that's happening in Gaza. And it flits back and forth very rapidly, and the sentences themselves are pretty scattered, not in a bad way, but it's just not something that I can listen to and be able to comprehend well. So I am now reading it as an ebook. That's what I'm going to be diving into next. I've read like the first 10 pages, but I'm going to wait to read a little bit more again before I update you. We'll see if one of the other holds comes in by the time I finish this one. That's the update for now. I will see you in a little bit. All right, we're here to give an update on Someday Everyone Will Have Always Been Against This. I'm pretty sure that's the title. I'll put the picture up here. And I am 40% of the way through at this point. So I wanted to just give you an update on how I'm feeling almost halfway in. I am so glad that I switched to the ebook for this because I am able to really like slow down in certain passages where it is more densely packed with ideas, and then maybe read a little bit more quickly when it's like in some of the memoir portions and it's a little bit more straightforward. And my reading pace is just like kind of naturally adjusting to the prose of that section of the book. But this is, I mean, it's just as good as everyone says it is, really. And I think this is also a common thing that people say who read it is like, this book, I already align with all of the views of this book. So in some ways, it's really nice to feel maybe like the solidarity of someone else having the same views as you. But like the people who, you know, I would say need to read this book are not the people who are going to be reading it, unfortunately. I do think there are a couple things that this book is doing really well, even for me, like someone who already agrees. It's doing a really good job about talking of the failures of the Democratic Party in the US to also support freeing Palestinians, and that they really are just taking this approach of like, choose us because we're the lesser evil, and that's not really a good enough choice. And like very, very loosely talking about the US's involvement in funding Israel. And that really is something that happens on both sides of party lines in the US and has for a long, long time. It's not going into depth about that. If you're wanting more like straight history on that, this is not going to be the book that does that for you, but it's doing a good job of calling out the lack of any true tangible support for Palestinians. It's like empty support on the Democratic side, but there's no tangible support to back that up. And that is also an extreme failure. So I'm appreciating that it's just being very explicit about that. And then secondly, I think this is also just a reminder for me of this is still going on. It's still just as serious as it was a year ago, and we need to be just as active as we were a year ago. Because I'll admit myself, like, I've stopped donating to some of the organizations that I was donating to from the beginning. So it's been a good reminder to me that, like, I need to get back on some of these things. And in that vein, I think I shared this a long time ago, but I will share some links down below in the description box if you are interested in trying to donate to an organization that's trying to provide like actual tangible aid to Palestinians. So if you're interested in those, they'll be in the description box. But that has also been a good reminder. Outside of that, it's just, I mean, it's horrific to read, right? Like, it's horrific to be reading about a genocide, as it should be. Omar Akkad is like very eloquently but directly talking about the moral and human failings of us in the West to turn a blind eye to people that feel distant from us. And yeah, I get why so many people like it. I would recommend you read it. I would recommend anyone read it, but my feeling is probably the only people that are going to read it are the people that already agree. But even so, right, if you're watching this, maybe it's just another reminder that people are still dying in mass, and that's wrong, and we should be wanting to do something about it, and we should be doing something about it. There's that. That's the update I'll leave you with for now. I will check back in once I've finished the book and then give you any additional thoughts. But yeah, heartbreaking, devastating, and very well written. So I will see you all in a little bit. Hello. We are back to give an update, and it's been a while since I've updated you, so we might be giving you several updates today to get you caught up. But I have since finished One Day Everyone Will Have Always Been Against This, so I wanted to kind of wrap up. I said most of what I think I want to say in the last clip, but I do think the second half of the book gets better, in my opinion. I think the second half of the book gets more specific, and for me personally, I enjoyed that better. It gets a little bit more specifically into the American political system. I do want to still be very clear that this is a memoir, so I want you to go into it with that frame of mind, right? This is a memoir about a journalist who is living in the US, who is an immigrant themselves and is sort of comparing their own immigrant experience to others and the transient nature of being an immigrant to the situation happening in Palestine, and is talking about them personally being currently like an American citizen, how they're reckoning with the way that our government is handling the genocide in Gaza. So it is a memoir. I want to be very clear about that. This would not be to replace like getting actual information and reporting from Palestine, nor is this a Palestinian author. So you'll still need to get information from own voices to actually get like firsthand experiences of what's going on there, because this author wouldn't know that nor has that. So I want to be careful about like the distinction between the two. So this, yeah, as long as you go into it knowing it's a memoir of someone who's living in America, their experience of reckoning with what's happening there while living here, then this book is really helpful. And I think like the overarching thing that maybe I talked about before, maybe I didn't, is that it just really does kind of speak to some of the dissonance of something catastrophic happening on a global scale and then feeling so surreal in your own immediate sphere when everybody's not on the same page of something catastrophic happening like a genocide. And particularly with this genocide, it is even a battle to get it recognized for the genocide that it is. In other instances, we have no qualms about labeling something a genocide, and people are much more unified in just labeling what's happening as it actually is, as opposed to the genocide in Gaza, which is persistently downplayed. And you can see that in like the reporting, the headlines, the language that they use. Everything is really minimized. And I think the author does a good job of bringing that out as the book goes on. So yeah, I think it's a great book. I would highly recommend if you're looking for a memoir that brings up these things. Particularly, I think it resonates if you are living in the US, because it is like our political system that is being centered here. So yeah, 5 stars. I was able to finish that on a trip that we took. On that same trip, on the plane, I started an audiobook because I still, at the time, had not gotten access to Stag Dance or the Hounding. That has since changed, but we'll get into that later. But on the plane, I was like, well, actually, there's this one other hole that has now come in that could fit the prompt of this video, which is just like 2025 releases that I've heard amazing things about, and so I want to get to them. And that book is Harriet Tubman Live in Concert. This is by Bob the Drag Queen. First novel by Bob the Drag Queen. The premise is wild, I'll tell you that in a second, but I have just been hearing good things about this. I am familiar with Bob the Drag Queen, but only slightly, and just so many people were giving it rave reviews. It made me really intrigued, and this book is really short. I think the audiobook is like 4 hours, so very short. I was excited to read it. So on the plane ride, I picked this up, and oh my gosh, it was fantastic. Let me tell you the premise, and then I will give you my review of it a little bit later, just so I'm not sitting here for too long chatting to you. But the premise of this book is that we kind of get plopped into this society, no questions asked, in which people can come back to life. So you can sort of choose to come back to life. I don't know how that happens. It doesn't explain it. You're just plopped right in. And Harriet Tubman has come back to life in modern times. And she reaches out to our main protagonist, who is a music producer. And she asks him to help her produce a musical album that she believes is like a modern way to get her wisdom out into the world. And so they start doing that. Wild premise, am I right? I'll give you my review in just a little bit. So I'll see you then. Okay, we're here to do another little update. Big is joining us, and it is Christmas. Christmas has arrived in our apartment, mainly to the bookshelves. There's stuff on the other side that you can't really see, but happy to be in the holiday spirit. So I want to give you a final update on Harriet Tubman Live in Concert. I know I gave you the synopsis last time, and I do want to remind you, I read this as an audiobook, and I would highly, highly, highly recommend the audiobook if you're going to read this book. It is read by Bob the Drag Queen, and they do such a good job performing it, and it really does feel performed. While the premise is wacky and you are needing to suspend a lot of disbelief to kind of get in, if you can do that, this book is so funny. It's so heartfelt, and I do think at the end of the day has an amazing message about what it means to be free and what it means to be free in a modern day context. This book is tackling that a little bit with being queer, and our main protagonist, the music producer, is queer but doesn't feel like he can be out and still have a successful career and still be accepted by society as a whole. So there are like those parallels with Harriet Tubman wanting to teach people how to be free, what it means to be free, while also simultaneously teaching our protagonist what that might mean for him. It's just an amazing story. It's so tight and compact and well constructed, in my opinion. I gave this 5 stars. If that is not obvious, I definitely gave it 5 stars. I would highly recommend it. It is really laser focusing on just a couple of things, but it does them extremely well, and I can always appreciate that in a book. Again, so funny. I was audibly laughing. I do not audibly laugh easily. I will often think something is funny, but I don't have a physical response to it. And this, I was cackling on the plane multiple times. My partner had to be like, what is happening that you're like laughing while you're listening to it? Oh my God, it was so funny. And the bonus about the audiobook is if you listen until the end, it includes 2 original songs that Bob the Drag Queen has written and performs at the end that are songs off of the album that they've created in the story. So overall, just fantastic. I 100% understand why people were loving this book this year, and I'm so happy I was able to fit it into this video and like pop it onto the plane. It was such a different reading experience for me than I normally have. I don't often read a lot of like funny books, so fantastic. Definitely recommend, worth your time. Big is leaving us. He's just gonna show his butt in the background probably. But oh, big stretch. So yeah, definitely read it if that sounds at all interesting to you. And again, it's only 4 hours, like well worth it. So let's dive on into the next book for this video, which is Stag Dance by Torrey Peters. I can't remember who publishes this, so I will put it down below somewhere. But this is Torrey Peters' sophomore book to be released. Her first book, Detransition Baby, I loved. It was in my favorite books of the year that I read it. I think a few years ago now. And this one is it 4 short stories and a novella? I think it's 4 short stories I'll put that down below too. I'll double check before I put this out. So I had high hopes, and I think this is the one at the start of the video that I anticipated I might like the most of anything I was going to be reading. Also, Big has just started eating his food, so if you hear that, you know, he's enjoying his life. So Stag Dance, I have high hopes for. Let me tell you about what I thought of the first 2 stories. It is structured where there's 2 short stories and then the novella, and then however many more short stories there are afterwards. So the novella is sandwiched in the middle. So the first 2 short stories, I liked to varying degrees. I loved the second story. I thought it was so phenomenal. One of the best short stories I've read this year. The first one felt a little bit flat for me. I think it was too long. So let me give you some like couple sentence synopses for each story. So the first story is taking place in a dystopian future. It's formatted in like diary entries or something like that. It's like journal entries that are like changing the timeline as we go. And it is about this dystopian society in which a virus has been released into the world, and we are following patient 0. And the virus has something to do with being transgender or non-binary. For me, it was unclear, but something to do with that scope. And we're following our narrator as they become infected in the very beginning and then spread it to other people, and then in the like aftermath years and years and years later. That story I thought was really interesting, very evocative, very descriptive, very like gritty in tone in a way that I really liked. But again, for me, it was just too long. I thought sections dipped and didn't really need to be there in my opinion. So that one I would say good, not great. Second story, we're following these 2 boys, but we only get one of their perspective. They're at like an all boys Quaker school somewhere out in the wilderness, and they're roommates with one another, and they start to have a romantic relationship with each other. And this story is really exploring gender again, which everything in this collection is exploring gender. Detransition Baby was exploring that as well. One of the boys is very femme and is sort of navigating what that looks like for them. They know that they're queer. It's more obvious that they're queer in that community. Oh no, there are girls there. There are girls there, but they live separately. So it's not just a boys' school. Anyway, and then our protagonist, who we're in the perspective of, is really consumed by presenting themselves as very stereotypically masculine, but is also very attracted to his roommate and enjoys seeing his roommate in this femme perspective and context. And they build a romance from there. And it kind of goes to strange places, I'll say, to leave it really vague. That story I loved. I felt like they were such unique, believable characters. I thought it encapsulated young romance really, really well, and how emotionally messy and complicated it can be, while also capturing the like beauty of feeling romance for the first time and exploring a new relationship. It just was so good. It also brings in like these outside family dynamics for our main protagonist. I absolutely loved it. And again, like one of the best singular stories I've read all year. And I have read some amazing short story collections this year. I will give you another update on the rest of Stag Dance a little bit later. And I have also picked up the Hounding. So we're in the home stretch of this vlog for sure. And so far, I've really enjoyed everything I've read. So fingers crossed that it just keeps going. So I will see you all in a little bit. Hello everyone. We're back and I'm here to do what is probably going to be a really long update. So strap in because we're going to be wrapping up this vlog. So we have a couple books to talk about. And this video has lasted so long. It's lasted so long and I just need it to be over at this point. And basically that's just because over November and December, if you've noticed, I've barely been posting on the channel. I think I've posted maybe 2 videos in the 2 months. And that's because I have either been traveling or been sick for the majority of those 2 months. I think between traveling and being sick, of which I was sick for 3 whole weeks, I have been not able to film for 5 weeks. So we're dealing with what we got. I'm happy to be back. You can tell maybe I'm like just barely finally getting better because I've had multiple various things going on with my body, but we are here and I finished a couple more books because I have definitely still been reading. So last I spoke to you, I believe I had talked to you about the first 2 short stories in Stag Dance. I've since finished Stag Dance, and the 3rd installment in Stag Dance is the novella. That novella I thought was pretty strong, like almost perfect novella in my opinion, and the audiobook was phenomenal. Let me give you the premise. So we start with our main protagonist. Oh, I can't remember his name. I'm not gonna be able to remember his name, but he is a really large, like traditionally masculine man in a lot of ways. He is a part of this logging group that are basically like pirate loggers. So they have come onto private property without the owner's knowledge and are felling a bunch of the logs for their own financial gain and trying to do it quickly before the owner can find out what they're doing. So he's a part of this like pretty large operation, although he is not in charge, but he is by far the best logger. So he can log at like twice the speed that the others can. And the guy that's in charge of all of these loggers of this illegal logging operation decides that he's going to put on a stag dance to help put all the men in better spirits, because he believes that it's not good for the men to be so long without any women around. So certain men can elect to show up to the dance as a woman by placing a piece of mesh over their pants where their genitalia would be to indicate that they are a female or opting to be female for that night. And our main protagonist is very intrigued by the idea of being able to become a female for the night. And that's also played off of this other character in the book. I can't remember his name either, but he is naturally very femme and gets a lot of the attention that our main protagonist would like to get. And we kind of go from there, and we get the dance before, during, and after. We get the relationship between these two that both have a desire to be seen as feminine, but it plays out for them in different ways. So yeah, really, really fascinating premise. The audio narration of that novella was spectacular. So good. They really do the like Southern accents spectacularly well, and I would highly recommend listening to this one on audio. My one qualm with this novella is that it is a little bit too long. I know I said that about the first short story as well, and I think the same thing happened in the novella. I think about 20 pages could have been taken out. There were some scenes that I don't think added to the story and just bogged it down and allowed the tension to drop for me. So that's my only small qualm with it, but I do think overall it was pretty great. The last short story of the collection, which comes after, and that arrangement is very strange to me, by the way, but we'll talk about that at the end. The last story is about a conference of trans people that are going to Las Vegas. Our main character is, I think, the youngest person there, and they meet this older trans woman who sees it upon herself to try and become a mentor to this younger trans person. And they really have differing values when it comes to their transness, and we get some really interesting conversation about that. That story, I think, accomplished exactly what it was trying to accomplish, but for me, it just didn't shine as bright as the second short story in this collection, which I felt were just like so perfectly captured the emotional life of the characters. That didn't ring true for me in the first and the last story. That emotional resonance wasn't quite there for me, but it was in the second story and the novella. And then first story and novella, I think, needed to be edited down just a smidge. So not a perfect collection for me, but like truly so good. That's me nitpicking on the collection. It is phenomenal, and it is having a ton of interesting conversation about gender in it. And I would highly recommend if you're wanting to read some more fiction around that. Torrey Peters is just a master. I love Detransition Baby. I do think I still like Detransition Baby a little bit more in my opinion, so I would maybe recommend starting there. Briefly, I do think the order of Stag Dance is a little bit strange, that the novella comes second to last. And it's also strange to me that for me, the two weaker stories are the first and the last story, which I just think is not smart for a collection. I think your strongest story should be the first story, and then maybe second strongest should be the last story. So it just was weirdly inverted for me, where the middle was the best chunk. So I don't know. I don't know what the decision-making process was there, but I would rearrange the stories in my opinion, and I think that would help the collection as a whole. So that is for what it is. That's just random opinion on my part. But let's quickly head over to The Hounding, because I have started and finished that book as well while I have been away. I also listened to this book on audio, so I'll preface with that, and the audio was good. This book has been really hyped. Maybe this might be the most hyped one. Well, no, the nonfiction probably was, but of the fiction books I read, this one might be the most hyped one that I've read this in this vlog. We are following 5 sisters who do not fit into the box that these townspeople, they live in a small town, it's historical. They do not fit into the small box that these town people want them to fit into, particularly the men in the town. They are not accommodating, let's say. And really, like, they're just being themselves. But of the time, and even now, right, women are expected to be accommodating, nice, to make other people feel at ease. And these girls don't do that. And as I've said before, this book is comped to the Virgin Suicides. And I think that's just because it is entirely told from the perspective of the townspeople around the sisters. You never get the sisters' perspective yourself. And you get that like almost like mass hysteria vibe from the townspeople that is mainly fueled by one man who is just a horrible fucking man. Like, he is the worst. He is that type of man who believes he's a good man and cannot see all of the danger and the harm and the entitlement that he has. And that just seeps into every interaction that he has with the girls and with the other townspeople. And he really poisons the girls' reputation to others. And that kind of escalates and builds over time. The main rumor that is the inciting incident of this book is that the girls are potentially turning into dogs. And then we see how that rumor spreads and morphs and impacts the town as a whole. This book was really well done. I think it darn near perfectly executed what it was trying to do, and I really enjoyed the reading experience. I get why so many people loved it. It's very short, very snappy. It is one of those books that is very concise in its message. It basically like has one main thing that it's trying to say, and then that one thing is layered in so many different ways throughout the narrative, and I love it when books do that really skillfully, and I think that's done in this. It really reminded me in that way of Annie Bot by Sierra Greer. Is that who wrote that book? I think it is. It's really doing one thing. For me, it's like all one extended metaphor, but it layers it so well. It puts so many interesting questions for that metaphor in play. And I think The Hounding does something really similar, and I loved it for that. This was a 5-star read for me. Now, it's a 5-star read that I don't think will be a favorite book of the year. It's a 5-star read that I just respect how well crafted this is and how good it is at accomplishing its goal. And I have no notes for it. I think it's fantastic. So that is The Hounding, would definitely recommend. And absolutely one of the best covers that I've seen this year. But overall, this vlog was such a success. I enjoyed everything that I read here. Everything was a 4 or 5 star for me, and maybe I think 3 of the things I read were 5 stars and 2 were 4 stars. So that is a fantastic hit rate. I'm so glad I took a detour from the books I own to read all of these books from the library. And all of them I read on audio except for One Day Everyone Will Have Always Been Against This. That one I read on my e-reader, and love the library for that. So shout out to our local libraries. Please let me know if you have read any of these, and if you have, what you thought about them, or if you're interested in reading them. I would love to know what were some of the 2025 releases that you heard great things about this year. I might do a video of 2025 releases that I didn't get a chance to get to early next year. So I'd love to hear any recommendations or things that you've heard. And with that, I will leave you all for the next video. Bye.